Keanu Reeves wasn't the type of person to make a big scene on a calm Friday evening. As he stepped into Elysian Grace, a fancy and exclusive restaurant tucked away in the heart of Los Angeles, everything seemed to slow down around him. Elysian Grace was known not just for its expensive food but also for its delicate, artistic approach to dining. The restaurant sparkled under the soft golden lights that shimmered off the polished tables. Each table was set with pristine white linens, candles flickering gently in the center, and glasses that seemed to catch the light and sparkle like diamonds. The atmosphere was exactly what you would expect from a high-end restaurant: quiet, elegant, and almost too perfect. Yet, Keanu's arrival was subtle. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo or a designer suit like the other patrons who seemed to belong to a different world. Instead, Keanu wore a simple white button-down shirt, slightly wrinkled from the long day he had likely had, paired with a pair of jeans that had seen better days. His hair was a little tousled, as though he hadn't spent too much time worrying about appearances. He walked through the door quietly, his presence understated but undeniable. The usual hum of the restaurant went on, the clinking of glasses and soft murmurs of conversations continuing until he entered. A few heads turned, their eyes narrowing in curiosity. A whisper here and there, "Is that him?" could be heard around the room. Yet Keanu seemed completely unfazed by the attention. To them he could have been anyone: a retired traveler passing through town, a regular guy who wandered into the restaurant by mistake, or maybe someone who didn't quite understand the kind of place he had walked into. At the hostess stand stood Lily. She was a sharp-featured woman in her early 30s, with her dark hair pulled back neatly, and her uniform impeccable. She carried herself with the air of someone who believed in the exclusivity of the restaurant. She prided herself on making sure that only the right kind of people entered and enjoyed the fine dining experience of Elysian Grace. She had dealt with countless customers, from celebrities to corporate leaders, and knew how to maintain the reputation of the place. When Keanu walked up to her, her professional smile faltered slightly. It wasn't obvious, but Keanu noticed the small flicker of hesitation in her eyes. Her gaze quickly scanned him up and down, pausing briefly on his worn shoes, which were scuffed from use. A judgmental thought flashed in her mind: he didn't exactly fit in with the usual crowd here. Yet, she quickly masked her judgment behind a forced smile. "Good evening," Keanu said in a deep, steady voice that didn't carry any sense of arrogance or demand, just a simple, polite greeting. "I'd like a table for one, please." Lily's smile remained, but there was something clipped about it now, as if she was unsure what to make of him. "Of course, sir," she replied, trying to sound as polite as possible. "Let me see what we have available." Keanu nodded, his expression neutral. As she glanced down at her seating chart, she bypassed the prime tables in the center of the restaurant, the ones near the soft chandeliers where the elite diners sat, enjoying the attention. Instead, she led him to a corner of the room near the kitchen doors. "This should be perfect for you," Lily said, her voice still courteous, but there was an edge to it now, as if she was offering a table she considered less desirable. She placed the menu on the table with a little more force than necessary, the sound of it sliding on the table slightly louder than it should have been. The nearby clatter of dishes and the smell of cooking food from the kitchen door was a stark contrast to the quiet luxury of the main dining area. Keanu, however, didn't flinch. He took a moment to glance around the restaurant, admiring the ornate decorations and the calm ambience. He then looked up at Lily and gave a simple, "Thank you." Lily's smile tightened and she stepped back a little. "If you need help with the menu," she said, "let me know. Some of our dishes can be a bit overwhelming for first-time visitors." Keanu gave a polite nod. "I'll be fine, thank you," he said, opening the menu without any sign of discomfort. Lily's gaze lingered for a moment, clearly expecting some form of hesitation or confusion from him. But none came. She turned and walked away, though her eyes kept glancing back over her shoulder at him, wondering why he didn't seem fazed by anything at all. At the nearby table, a couple, Vincent and Layla, exchanged glances. Vincent, an older man with silver hair and a sophisticated air, leaned toward his wife. "That's Lily," he said, lowering his voice. "She always acts like she's the gatekeeper of this place." Layla sighed, shaking her head. "It's a shame. He seems perfectly polite." "I don't get it." Vincent chuckled softly. "It's not about being polite. He's different though. He's not worried about fitting in. Look at the way he's sitting there." Back at the hostess stand, Lily couldn't help but whisper to Max, a younger man with a kind demeanor who worked alongside her. "Did you see him?" she asked, a bit of disdain in her voice. "I bet he doesn't even know what kind of place he walked into." Max frowned slightly, his voice neutral. "I don't know. He seems fine to me." Lily rolled her eyes. Look at him. No reservation, dressed like that and sitting there like he belongs. This is a luxury restaurant, Max. We cater to a certain type of clientele. Max didn't respond, but his frown deepened. He couldn't understand why Lily was so determined to judge this man who hadn't even done anything to earn her disapproval. Meanwhile, Keanu sat calmly at his table, oblivious to the whispers surrounding him. His posture was relaxed, his gaze occasionally drifting across the room, but he didn't seem troubled. His presence was almost magnetic, and as time passed, the attention in the room slowly began to shift towards him. The whispers grew more frequent, the curiosity stronger. Vincent and Layla, still watching from their table, exchanged another look. You know, Layla whispered, there's something about him. He seems strangely familiar. Vincent studied Keanu carefully. It's not just that he looks familiar. It's his presence. It's almost like he commands the room, but not in an obvious way. He just is. And yet, he doesn't belong here. Layla nodded, her curiosity piqued. Do you think Lily realizes what she's doing? She's only making herself look worse. Vincent chuckled softly. Not yet. But she will. Lily returned to Keanu's table a few moments later, this time carrying a glass of water. She placed it down with a little too much force, making the ice cubes rattle loudly in the glass. Your steak will be out shortly, she said, her voice tight. Thank you, Keanu replied simply, his tone unchanged. He looked up at her for a brief moment, his gaze steady but unbothered, before returning to his quiet observation of the room. Lily, growing frustrated, walked away, but not without casting a final, almost disbelieving glance at him. At the front of the room, Max watched the exchange and leaned over to Lily. He's not reacting the way you expected, is he? He said, his voice soft. Lily scowled. He's too calm. It's like he doesn't even care. Max shrugged slightly. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just wants to enjoy his meal like anyone else. Lily, however, wasn't ready to let it go. No, she said firmly. I need to see this through. He'll regret it by the end of the night. Back at his corner table, Keanu continued to sit quietly, his calm demeanor almost making him invisible. The tension in the room seemed to grow as more diners noticed him. The whispers became louder, more curious. The air became thick with unspoken questions. Who was he? What was he doing here? And then, after what felt like an eternity, the moment arrived. Lily emerged from the kitchen, carrying a silver tray with the prized Wagyu steak. She walked deliberately toward Keanu's table, her steps slow and purposeful as if she were performing for an audience. She set the steak in front of him with a flourish, a final act in her silent drama. Your steak, she said, her voice carrying a forced sweetness as if she was proud of her delivery. Keanu looked up at her, unflinching. Thank you, he said, his voice steady and calm. The tension in the room had reached its peak, and everyone seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable moment when Keanu would either break under the pressure or remain calm, continuing his quiet defiance of the restaurant's unwritten rules. Lily stood at the hostess stand with a small smirk on her face. She had seen Keanu walk in earlier, but something about the way he looked made her feel a little annoyed. He wasn't wearing anything too fancy, just a simple jacket and jeans, and he didn't seem to care much about where he was sitting. Lily had assumed he was just another customer, maybe someone who wasn't able to afford the finer things at this fancy restaurant. Enjoy, Lily said, her voice dripping with just a little bit of attitude as she handed him the menu. She didn't even bother to look him in the eye as she said it. She thought he probably won't stay long anyway. After all, people who don't care about appearances often don't stay at restaurants like this for too long. Thank you, Keanu replied, his voice calm and steady. He didn't seem to notice her attitude at all. He simply picked up his knife and fork and began cutting into his perfectly cooked steak with great care, like he was savoring every bite. Lily stood there for a moment, waiting for him to react in some way. She wanted to see him fumble, maybe ask nervously for the bill or even seem out of place. But Keanu didn't do any of that. He ate his steak slowly, like someone enjoying a peaceful dinner at home. His calmness only made Lily more frustrated. Why wasn't he breaking? Why wasn't he reacting the way she thought he would? As she stood there, she glanced around the restaurant. The other diners had started to notice the strange tension in the air. Vincent, sitting at the central table, leaned over to Layla, his voice low but filled with admiration. He's not just calm, Vincent whispered. He's in control. Layla nodded, her eyes glinting with understanding. Lily doesn't even realize what she's up against. The atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. People who had previously ignored the quiet man in the corner began to pay attention. Whispers started to pass between the tables, and the tension in the air grew thicker. It was like everyone knew something important was about to happen, but no one knew exactly what it would be. The soft buzz of conversation quieted as the eyes of every diner moved toward Keanu. Lily stood near the hostess stand, her irritation growing with each passing moment. She stole glances at Keanu as he ate, still waiting for him to show some sort of reaction, anything that would confirm her assumptions about him. But nothing happened. He was completely unfazed, still eating his meal like everything was perfectly normal. Meanwhile, Clara, the manager of the restaurant, emerged from the kitchen. Her tall, poised figure immediately caught everyone's attention. She walked with purpose and authority, her polished appearance making her seem like someone who was in charge. When she scanned the room and saw Keanu, her expression changed. There was a brief flicker of surprise in her eyes, followed by a look of recognition. Without missing a beat, Clara began walking toward Keanu's table. Lily saw her move and stiffened. What was going on? Why was Clara walking toward him? Did she know him? Lily's mind raced as she tried to figure out what was happening. Clara stopped beside Keanu's table and, in a complete change of tone, spoke warmly. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice full of respect and admiration. "It's such an honor to have you dining with us tonight." The entire restaurant fell silent. Lily froze, her heart racing. Mr. Reeves? Did she just say Mr. Reeves? Keanu Reeves? The famous actor? The same Keanu Reeves who had starred in so many movies, who was known and loved around the world. Lily's face turned pale as the realization hit her like a wave. She had been rude to a global icon and she didn't even know it. Keanu looked up from his meal and smiled gently. "Clara," he said, his voice calm and friendly. "It's good to see you. I hope I'm not causing any trouble." Clara shook her head quickly. "Not at all, Mr. Reeves," she said almost reverently. "We would have prepared something special for you if we had known you were coming." Lily couldn't believe what was happening. She had thought Keanu was just some ordinary customer. She had thought he didn't belong here. But now the entire restaurant was buzzing with the news that the famous Keanu Reeves was sitting quietly in the corner. She felt like she was sinking into the floor. How could she have been so blind? Clara continued speaking to Keanu, her tone warm and professional. "I hope everything has been to your satisfaction, Mr. Reeves. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to let me know." Keanu nodded with a smile. "Everything's perfect, Clara. Thank you." As Clara walked away, the whispers in the restaurant grew louder. The diners were exchanging wide-eyed glances. They had no idea that the calm, composed man in the corner was a famous celebrity. Lily's stomach twisted with anxiety as she felt the weight of everyone's judgment on her. How could she have treated him that way? Vincent leaned back in his chair and said to Layla, "I knew it. The way he carries himself, you can tell he's someone who's used to being respected." Layla nodded, her eyes twinkling with amusement. Lily thought she was teaching him a lesson, but it's her who's going to learn one tonight. Lily's face burned with shame. She felt like everyone in the room was looking at her, judging her for how she had treated Keanu. She wished she could crawl into a hole and disappear, but she knew she couldn't escape now. The damage had been done, and she would have to face the consequences of her actions. Clara approached Lily, her expression now serious. She motioned for Lily to step aside. Lily's heart pounded in her chest as she nervously walked over to Clara. "What exactly has been going on here tonight?" Clara asked in a firm, no-nonsense tone. "Why was Mr. Reeves seated in the corner near the kitchen?" Lily stammered, her confidence completely gone. I didn't know who he was," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought he didn't belong here." Clara fixed Lily with a sharp gaze. "You thought he didn't belong because of how he looked?" she asked, her voice calm but stern. Lily nodded faintly, too ashamed to meet Clara's eyes. "I didn't mean anything by it," she said quickly. I just thought." "That's enough," Clara interrupted, her voice cutting through Lily's explanation. "Every single guest deserves to be treated with respect. It doesn't matter who they are or what they look like. Respect isn't something you give to people based on what you think they deserve. It's something you offer to every person no matter what." Lily's heart sank as she realized the full weight of her mistake. She glanced over at Keanu, still sitting calmly at his table, completely unaffected by the drama that had unfolded. She felt the sting of shame deep in her chest. She had been rude to him for no reason other than her own assumptions. Vincent, sitting at the central table, leaned over to Layla again. "Keanu didn't have to say a word," he whispered. "His presence alone taught all of us something tonight." Layla nodded thoughtfully. "It's true. Respect shouldn't depend on appearances. It's a simple truth, but it's easy to forget. The atmosphere in the restaurant had shifted dramatically. What had started as a buzz of whispers and judgment had turned into a heavy silence, filled with reflection. Lily, still standing near the hostess stand, felt like everyone in the room was silently judging her. She wanted to run away, but she knew she had to face what was happening. Keanu, sensing the shift in the room, gently set down his utensils and wiped his mouth with a napkin. He rose from his chair and everyone's eyes followed him. He didn't need to call for attention. It was already on him. With a calm but commanding voice he spoke. "Before I leave tonight," he said, his words cutting through the tension, "I'd like to say a few words." The room went silent. Everyone leaned in, eager to hear what he had to say. Lily's heart was pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe this was happening. Was Keanu really going to speak to everyone? "I came here tonight for a quiet dinner," Keanu began, his voice steady. "I didn't expect to draw attention and I didn't mean to cause a scene. But what's happened here tonight isn't just about me. It's about something much bigger." Everyone in the room was listening intently. Keanu paused, and when he spoke again, his words were filled with quiet strength. "Respect," he said, "isn't something you give to someone based on how they look, what they wear, or what you think they can afford. It's something you offer to everyone no matter who they are because they are human." Lily felt a deep sense of shame wash over her. Keanu's words weren't angry, but they hit her hard. She lowered her head, unable to look anyone in the eye. She knew what she had done and she knew she had to learn from it. Keanu's voice softened as he continued. "This restaurant is beautiful, and it's clear that a lot of care has gone into making it a special place. But true beauty isn't just in the chandeliers or the fine china. It's in how you treat the people who walk through these doors." Vincent nodded slowly from his seat. "He's right," he said quietly to Layla. "It's easy to get caught up in appearances, but we need to remember what really matters." And with that, Keanu finished his meal, and the quiet reflection in the room carried on. The lesson had been learned by everyone present, not just by Lily, but by all who had witnessed the quiet power of respect. Keanu looked around the room, taking in everything. Tonight he had felt two very different things: kindness and judgment. The judgment was loud and easy to hear, but the kindness, though quieter, was much stronger. He could feel it deep inside. He wanted to thank everyone who had shown kindness, and to those who had judged, he hoped his words would make them think. Keanu's voice was calm, but it made everyone in the room stop and think about what they had done and said. Max, who had been standing near the kitchen, felt proud of what Keanu had said. Earlier in the night, he had tried to defend Keanu in a quiet way. Now, hearing Keanu speak like that, he felt even more sure that what he had done was right. It was a good reminder for everyone in the room. Keanu's eyes finally landed on Lily, and there was no anger in his look, just a quiet strength. "You see," Keanu said, his voice steady, "mistakes happen. What's important is what we learn from them. I believe every one of us here can change and grow." Lily's throat felt tight. She blinked quickly to stop the tears from coming. For the first time that night, she didn't feel like a person who had been judged wrongly, but someone who had a chance to learn and be better. Lily took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Keanu turned back to the rest of the room, speaking to everyone. "This isn't just about one person," Keanu said. "It's a reminder for all of us. When we judge people by how they look, we miss the chance to understand them. We miss the chance to connect. We miss seeing the real person inside." The room grew quiet. Some people nodded, agreeing with what Keanu had said, while others looked down, thinking about what he had just told them. Keanu took a small step back, letting his words settle in everyone's minds. "Thank you for listening," Keanu said, smiling. "I hope tonight will be remembered not because of the mistakes we made, but because of what we can learn from them." As Keanu finished speaking and returned to his seat, a slow clap started from across the room. Layla, a lady sitting at a table, began clapping, her smile warm. Vincent, who was sitting with her, joined in. Soon, others followed and the whole restaurant was clapping. It wasn't just for Keanu. They were applauding the lesson he had shared, the way he spoke with humility, and the reminder to be better. Lily stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Her face felt hot from the shame, but deep inside she felt a flicker of hope. She realized she wasn't being punished or scolded. Instead, she was being given a chance to do better. Clara, who was standing nearby, stepped forward and said, "Lily, let's have a word after the shift." Lily nodded, her voice barely a whisper, "Yes, of course." Max, who had been standing near the kitchen, looked over at Lily. He gave her a small smile. It was a mix of sympathy and relief. He had seen how hard the night had been for her. Even though she had made mistakes, he could see that she was learning from them. He gave her a little nod of encouragement, but Lily didn't see it. At his table, Keanu was finishing his meal. He was eating a slice of lemon tart, looking calm as ever. Even though everyone had been watching him, he didn't act like anything special had happened. When Clara came by to check on him, he greeted her with a friendly smile. "Mr. Reeves, I just wanted to thank you again for your words tonight," Clara said, standing beside his table. "They meant so much to the staff and everyone in the room." Keanu smiled back at her. "Please just call me Keanu," he said. "There's no need to thank me. It was just something that needed to be said." Clara paused for a moment before leaning in a little closer. "Lily feels terrible about how she treated you," Clara said. "She's young, but she has the potential to be better. I think tonight will be a turning point for her." Keanu nodded slowly, thinking for a moment. "Everyone makes mistakes," he said softly. "What matters is how we grow from them. Give her the chance to prove herself." Clara smiled slightly. "I will. Thank you for your understanding." As the last of the diners left the restaurant, the staff gathered in the dining area. Lily stood at the edge, feeling nervous. She crossed her arms tightly over her chest, feeling like everyone was staring at her and judging her. Keanu stood up from his table and walked over to the group of staff. He looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes for just a moment before he began to speak. "I wanted to say a few words before I leave," Keanu said, his voice calm and steady. "Tonight wasn't about me. It was about all of us and the choices we make every day." His eyes swept across the group, stopping for a second on Lily. "We all carry things with us. Assumptions, biases, things we don't even notice. But those assumptions can hurt people. They can close doors instead of opening them." Lily felt her chest tighten. His words hit her like a heavy weight. She clenched her hands into fists, trying to stop them from shaking. Keanu's voice softened. "But here's the thing. Mistakes don't define who we are. How we respond to them does. Tonight there was an opportunity to learn. And I hope all of us take something valuable from this experience." He turned to Lily. "Lily," he said, his voice gentle, "I know tonight was hard for you. And I want you to know that I'm not angry. I believe you can grow from this." Lily swallowed hard. Her cheeks turned red and she forced herself to meet Keanu's eyes. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "Mr. Reeves." "Keanu, I'm so sorry for how I treated you. I was wrong. I judged you unfairly and I let my assumptions blind me. I promise I'll do better." Keanu nodded. His expression softened even more. "Thank you for saying that," he said. "The fact that you're standing here and owning up to it shows strength. Growing isn't easy, but it's worth it." The other staff members nodded quietly, showing their respect for both Keanu and Lily. Even Max, who had been quietly watching, felt proud of what had just happened. Clara stepped forward and placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "We've all had moments where we fall short," she said gently. "What matters is that we rise above them." Lily nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She felt a small sense of relief but also a new determination to do better, not just for Keanu or Clara but for herself. Keanu looked around at the staff, his tone strong yet gentle. "This restaurant is beautiful not because of its fancy lights or delicious food, but because of the people who work here. You have the power to make every guest feel welcome, no matter who they are or where they come from. That's a gift and a responsibility." The staff stood in silence, thinking carefully about his words. Even the kitchen staff, who had been quietly observing from the back, nodded in agreement. Keanu stepped back slightly, signaling that he was done. "Thank you all for listening," he said. "And thank you for the meal. It was wonderful." Clara stepped forward, her voice full of gratitude. "Keanu, thank you for everything. Your words will stay with us." Keanu smiled. "Take care of each other," he said simply. "That's what really matters." With that, Keanu nodded to the group and left the restaurant. Lily watched him go. The weight of the night was still heavy on her, but now it wasn't crushing her. It felt grounding, like a chance to start fresh. She had been given a second chance, and she was determined to make the most of it. As the door to Elysian Grace closed behind Keanu, the staff stayed in the dining room. The quiet hum of their thoughts filled the air. It wasn't just Lily who had learned something that night, it was all of them. Keanu's words had left a lasting impact. He had reminded them that respect and kindness weren't just things to talk about, they were things to do. They were choices that could change the world in big ways. Lily stood near the hostess stand, her gaze focused on the door Keanu had just walked through. The evening felt heavy on her, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a weight she couldn't bear. It felt like something she could grow from. Clara came over, smiling at Lily. She placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "You did well tonight," Clara said softly. Admitting when you're wrong and promising to do better, that's the first step. Now you just have to follow through. Lily nodded. I will. I owe it to myself and to this team. Max, who had been cleaning the bar, walked over with a smile and handed Lily a cup of tea. You've got this, he said. And for what it's worth, I've seen plenty of people make worse mistakes and never learn from them. You're already ahead of the curve. Lily chuckled, feeling the warmth of the tea in Max's words. Thanks, Max. That means a lot. The team gathered together, ready to close for the night. Clara stood in the middle, her posture calm but firm. Tonight wasn't just a regular evening, she began. We learned something tonight. We learned about how we treat others, how we carry ourselves, even when we don't realize it. We're human. We all make mistakes. But what matters is that we grow from them and try to be better every day. The staff nodded in agreement. Some were deep in thought, others determined to be better. For some, Keanu's words had been a reminder. For others, it had been a wake-up call. But for all of them, it was a challenge to do better. As Keanu stepped out into the cool night, the streets of Los Angeles seemed quieter. The city lights shimmered softly in the distance. Keanu adjusted his jacket, his face serene as he walked along the sidewalk. He thought about the night, about Lily's mistakes and her apology. There was no anger in his thoughts, just quiet satisfaction. He was glad that his words had made a difference. Keanu had spent much of his life being judged by others. He had learned that the real measure of a person wasn't in how they reacted to judgment, but in how they carried themselves despite it. Tonight, he had shared that lesson with others, and he hoped it would stay with them for a long time. As the staff finished their work, Lily lingered by the table where Keanu had sat. She wiped it down slowly, the action feeling symbolic, a way to close the chapter on the night while getting ready for a new beginning. She paused for a moment, staring at the empty chair, taking a deep breath. Max walked over with 2 mugs of tea. You look like you could use this, he said, offering her one. Lily smiled, accepting the warm drink. Thanks, Max, she said quietly. The two sat in the quiet dining room, the soft hum of the dishwasher filling the silence. You know, Max said lightly, tonight could have gone really differently. But the way you owned up to everything? That's what matters. Lily nodded, her fingers curled around the mug. I didn't realize how quick I was to judge. It's not who I want to be. Max smiled. Then don't be. Start fresh tomorrow. Lily gave him a grateful look. I will. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more stories. I'll see you in the next video.